Today we're going to show you one of our favorite travel hacks, which is the use of repositioning cruises. Now, cruising in general isn't usually considered cheap, but when used correctly, we're going to show you how they can be surprisingly affordable, even for people traveling on a budget. We've taken 7 cruises together, and 4 of those were repositioning cruises. Now, little fun fact, David has actually done quite a bit more than me because he used to work on the cruise ships back in the day, I know. But today, we're gonna take you through 3 different sections. We're gonna help answer what is a repositioning cruise and why do you wanna take one. Then we're gonna walk you through the booking process about how you wanna find and book the cruise of your dreams. And then finally, we're gonna give you some ideas of how you can best enjoy that cruise because they can be a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm David, this is Rob, and we are 10 degrees warmer. We are 2 long-term travelers, and we are here to give you an example of what is possible in travel.
So David, what is a repositioning cruise?
A repositioning cruise is a cruise that moves from one part of the world to another. For example, if a ship has just spent a season in the Caribbean, that ship may be moving to Alaska or to Europe for the winter. That movement from one area to the other is the repositioning cruise. Those usually take place in spring and fall, so April, May, or October, November. So Rob, why would someone want to take a repositioning cruise?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because there are actually quite a few reasons why a repositioning cruise might be useful for you. And the first one is kind of a big one. It's that cruise then can take the place of an airplane ticket. So let's say you are in Spain and you're trying to get to Brazil. I'm gonna use some round numbers just to make the math easy, but let's say you've found plane tickets to go from Barcelona to Rio for $1,000 for 2 people, and you've also found a cruise that's 2 weeks and makes the same distance for $2,500. So now for just $1,500 more, you found a 2-week vacation that's going to be a lot more fun and a lot more comfortable.
Another fun thing about the cruises is, like I said, they take place in the spring and fall, which is shoulder season, which means that probably in both the location you're leaving and the location you're going to, it is shoulder season, which means there are less crowds and things are less expensive.
Another good reason why you might want to consider it is that these repositioning cruises can be surprisingly affordable. So for one, there's just lower demand to take the repositioning cruises because for most people, they want to fly to a place, they take a round trip cruise and they can fly home. For repositioning cruises, if you're going just for the cruise, it means you have to fly like to Barcelona, take the cruise across the Atlantic, and then you fly home from Miami. It's just a little bit more tricky. And so some people don't do it. I know some of the repositioning cruises we have taken, the ship has been like at 50% capacity. So because of that low demand, prices tend to come down and you can get them for surprisingly cheap. And then in addition, the cruise is also covering your hotel for those, 14 days, whatever it is, your food, your entertainment, like it's all included in that one price. So when you put it all together, it can be surprisingly affordable.
Yeah. And also what he just mentioned was the ships are lower capacity, so they are usually a lot quieter and calmer than some of your mid-season Caribbean party boats. Lots of people there are just there to relax, and generally because it is school time, there aren't as many children either, so that can keep things quieter on the ship.
Another thing is that you're going to see a different clientele. Generally, the repositioning cruises tend to skew older, and they tend to often be, at least in our experience, you're going to find more people like you, slow travelers who are out for an adventure. We have made some really great lifelong friends from people that we met on these long repositioning cruises. We met some people, we took a cruise from Barcelona to Miami, and then we We did back-to-back cruises. We stayed on Miami and went all the way to Santiago, Chile. And so for 30 days, like, we met a lot of people that we are still in touch with. You can meet some really great people, and it just makes the cruising a lot more fun.
Also, you're going to find some very unique itineraries. Some of these repositioning cruises go to places that no other cruises go to. We recently went across the South Pacific and hit all kinds of fantastic islands. And there's not a lot of cruises that go to those locations. Also, islands in the Atlantic and on the Indian Ocean, you'll hit a lot of places that you will not hit on any other cruise.
Another great reason to do it is because you don't have to worry so much about jet lag. So I don't know about any of you, but I am someone who really suffers from jet lag. It takes me like 2 weeks to adjust. But on a cruise ship, instead of you get on a plane and 10 hours later, you're 6 hours different, you're taking that day by day. You lose an hour today, you lose an hour in 2 days from now, and it becomes much, much easier to adjust for the jet lag, and it can be a lot more comfortable. Once you're ready to look into taking a repositioning cruise, there are some things you're going to want to consider. So the first is just finding them. So there's a couple of different ways that you can find these repositioning cruises, and it just sort of depends on, your style as a travel researcher. So the kind of most straightforward way is to go to the line directly, the cruise line directly that you want to travel with, and search on their website. There's quite a lot of different lines, and if you have a favorite one, this might be the easiest way. You can go there and see what they offer. But this is going to be limited if you're kind of a nerd like me. I go to all of the different cruise lines and kind of see what I can find, but that can take some time. So there are easier ways to do it. There are multiple aggregation sites that you can look at, but one very popular one is Vacations to Go. Now, one of the benefits about looking at Vacations to Go is that the repositioning cruises, the different cruise lines sometimes call them different things. So sometimes they call it a repositioning cruise. Sometimes they will call it what it is by region. So they'll call it a transatlantic cruise or a trans-Pacific cruise. And if you search for transatlantic cruises, you're not necessarily going to see all of the repositioning cruises that are available coming from Africa or South America. And so it just kind of limits you. One of the benefits of looking on Vacations to Go is they do have a search metric for repositioning cruises, which will just allow you to see all of them at once. So that can be really helpful. Another website I've used in the past is called Cruise Sheet. It's kind of a nice one because, again, you can search by different parameters, but this one you can actually search by price. And so you can put in repositioning cruises and the time of year you want to go, and then it will order it by price per day. It's going to do that probably by an inside cabin, but so don't pay attention to that price specifically because we're going to talk about how that can change going forward anyway, but it will give you a good idea of where you can start. And so I have done all three of these methods, and depending on what you're looking for, all three can be effective.
You also need to consider time and place. We already said most of these cruises take place in the spring and fall. So if you're looking to go from one part of the world to another in summer, your options may be very limited. Also, consider where you are going to and from. Sometimes these make perfect sense. The last time we took a repositioning cruise, we were in Asia and we needed to come back to the States. We found a cruise that went from Australia towards the States, and it worked out perfect for us. We are already in one location and already planning to go to the other location.
Hey there, Future Rob here. So this next part of the video is about helping you decide if any particular cruise is going to be affordable for you or not by comparing the cost of not taking the cruise with the cost of taking the cruise. There's a bunch of different variables that kind of go into that. And what I realized after we made the video is that I could turn this into a spreadsheet. So I have made a Google Sheets template for you. It's going to do, once you understand the variables, you just have to plug in your numbers and then it's going to do the calculations for you to make it very simple. I will put a link to that in the description below the video. I hope you find that helpful, but let's get back to explaining what we're looking for. Another thing you're going to want to do to see if this is going to be an affordable option for you, because we all have different budgets, but is to say, okay, if the cruise that I'm looking at is a 14-day cruise, for example, then what you want to do is say, if I wasn't to take the cruise, if I was just going to fly, how much money would I spend over that same amount of time? So how much am I going to spend on the flight getting from, Barcelona to Miami? How much am I going to spend for 14 days of hotel? How much am I going to spend for 14 days of food? How much am I going to spend on the entertainment during that period? And kind of just add all that up. And that's going to give you a rough idea of where your baseline is of what could make that cruise affordable for you.
So those numbers show what it's going to cost if you don't take the cruise. Now you need to know how much it's going to cost if you do take the cruise. So you're going to look up your cruise, you're going to put in the one you want, and you're going to see a number there. That number is not the full story. There are lots of fees that are not in the initial number you're going to see. There are port fees and taxes and tips, and all of those add up. So click through to the end and see what you're going to have to pay. Tips can be from $14 to $20 a day per person. So really add in all of those extra costs.
Yes, so tips can really add up to the price of your cruise. But once you have all those mandatory fees, then there are optional fees you're going to want to be very specific about what you're willing to pay. So beyond just the price of the cruise is going to cover most of your things for you, but the cruise ship wants to upgrade you at every turn. There is lots of ways you can upgrade. And you don't have to, so it just depends on what you want, but you want to be very specific about that. So the first one is the big one, is do you want to upgrade your room? The cheapest way is going to be getting an inside cabin. We tend to like inside cabins. I am an insomniac, and being in a pitch black room that is rocking me like a baby, I sleep super good on those inside rooms, so I like them. But if you want to get a balcony room, just know that's going to cost you a premium, and you need to factor that into your consideration. The next thing you're going to want to look at is food. Now, on every cruise ship, there is going to be plenty of free food that is included in the dining room, in the buffet. There's going to be other little places. But there's also specialty restaurants that every cruise ship has that they would love for you to come. These specialty restaurants tend to be very good.
They're good.
Norwegian has an excellent steakhouse. It's really good, but it's going to cost you. Sometimes the specialty dining can cost you $40, $50, maybe $60 a plate. It definitely adds up. So you just want to be aware if that's on your agenda, you have to be ready to consider that in your budget. Another thing you're going to want to look at is alcohol. So generally speaking, alcoholic beverages are not included in the price of your cruise. Many cruise lines will have like a all-you-can-drink package. And so you need to do the math of how much alcohol are you really going to drink. For a lot of them, like it really doesn't make any sense unless you're going to be drinking like 8 or 9 drinks a day. And you think like, maybe one day you want to party and you could have 8 or 9 drinks, but can you have that much drinks every single day of the cruise? What about the day where you're in port all day and you don't even get back to the ship until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night?
These are long cruises too.
Yeah.
Repositioning cruises are often 2 weeks or more.
Like for us, like I would die of alcohol poisoning if I even tried to make it worth it. So for us, we'd never get the drink package. We want a glass of wine with dinner. We buy a single glass of wine. It's much more expensive that way, but in the long run, it's much cheaper because we're not buying so much. Another thing is just shopping. All the cruise ships are going to love to sell you things. They've got stores with the t-shirts and the plushies, and then there's going to be the art gallery. There's and jewelry,
casino,
and perfume, the casino,
all kinds of things.
So you just need to be aware, are you a person that's going to want to spend money shopping? And if you are, that's fine. Just make sure you add it into your budget. Now, in addition to those upgrades on shore, you also need to consider how much are you going to spend when you're in port. So, all the food is included on the ship, but if you're out in port all day and you're going to go get lunch somewhere, that's something you're going to need to add into the price of your budget. Again, there's excursions that you can take in a lot of the ports. Whether you take them through the cruise ship, which tend to be the easiest and hassle-free, and also the most expensive. Are you going to take the time and effort to find your own private excursions, which can be much cheaper and sometimes even more fun, and smaller groups? But that's going to cost you money. And so all of these things you need to add up in your head so you understand Am I comparing apples to apples? This is how much it would cost me if I didn't take the cruise just to live my life for those 14 days. This is how much it would cost me to do all the upgrades that I would want to do and have that experience. And is the difference between the two, is that something I'm willing to pay to have this upgraded experience? If you're enjoying this video and we've inspired you to take a cruise, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button.
Another thing to consider is which cruise line you want to take. There's a lot of differences with the cruise lines, not just expenses or amenities that they offer, but itineraries. We often check around because some itineraries may cross the Atlantic and go from one side to the other, while others stop at a couple Caribbean islands and then maybe the Azores or Canary Islands on the way over. So really check which cruise line is going to offer you the itinerary and the services that are best for you.
Yeah, for our Trans-Pacific cruise, like we looked at all of them, and there were so many that went directly from Sydney, Australia to French Polynesia with like 7 sea days in a row. And then we looked at Norwegian and they stopped at 6 different islands
Or more.
in between those two places, which made it a no-brainer for us. We definitely chose that cruise because it was the most fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? So the next thing you want to just think about is, what is the value of going to those unusual ports? So again, on that Trans-Pacific cruise, we went to Vanuatu and Fiji. The cost that it would take us if we wanted to fly to all of the islands that we went to, that would have been exorbitant. You couldn't even fly to all those places on one itinerary with all the backtracking that you would have to do. It would have been insanely expensive. And going to those islands, I'm obsessed with the South Pacific. Like, that was a dream cruise for me. And so I really wanted to go to them. So we paid more for the cruise than we would if we had just flown from Sydney to home in Vegas. But that cost that we paid was definitely worth it because I really wanted to go to those places.
Also, think about dress codes. Different ships have formal nights, some are more casual. We were lucky to go with a pretty casual cruise line this last time because our clothing is limited. We are full-time travelers living out of 2 small backpacks. And we don't have room for formal clothes.
Yeah, we don't have a tux in there.
We don't have a tux. We don't have a suit. We hardly have long pants. So pay attention to which cruises have formal nights, which are more casual, depending on your personal situation and what will work best for you while traveling.
So once you've done all your math, if you've decided that the repositioning cruise is something you want to do, there's a couple of different ways you can book it. The first one is to go direct to the cruise line you want to sail with. This is sometimes the easiest option because if anything goes wrong, you're booking right with the company. They're going to be able to take care of you in a much easier way. It's just very easy, and some people prefer to do that. No problem with that. However, if you want to get sometimes a little extra bit of a deal, you want to work through a travel agent. So if you work with a travel agent, you are not going to pay any more. The travel agent gets paid by the cruise line themselves. It does not make your cruise any more expensive. And sometimes they can offer you little extra perks. So again, Vacations to Go is a great place to do this. They've got travel agents there and they'll say, okay, the price, you looked up the price of the cruise and this is what you found. And they'll say, we can give you that exact same price, but in addition, we'll also be able to throw in, a free bottle of wine that'll be delivered to your stateroom, or $50 or $100 shipboard credit for you to use while you're on the ship. They have different little promos that come and go at different times, but again, it doesn't cost you any more, and you can get a little bit extra working with that agent. Another place that we have used in the past is a website called Cruise Compete, and what you do there is once you pick your cruise, you go there and you build your quote and you say, this is the cruise I want to take, this is how much it's going to cost me, and then you post it, and different travel agents will look at that and they'll get back to you and they say, I can give you that exact cruise and I can also give you, $100 shipboard credit. or I can give you that cruise and I give you $50 shipboard credit and an extra free dining at one of the specialty dining places. And they kind of compete with each other depending on what perks their agency has. And then when we've done it, we've gotten, 3, 4, 5 different quotes, and we can see if any of them have beat what we already have, and we can pick the one that we want to work with. So that can kind of be a good thing too. Again, at the end, it just comes down to what you're comfortable with. But working with a travel agent can get you some extra little perks.
Lastly, we suggest making some connections before you leave on the trip. Hopefully on the ship you'll meet a lot of great people, and we always do. But another thing we do is we sign up for Cruise Critic Roll Call. This is a forum, a chat forum, in which you can meet other people taking your exact cruise, and you can coordinate who's taking an excursion. They do all kinds of fun activities if you're into those things, like a pub crawl or a cabin crawl where they check out each other's cabins. They play games. They have receptions where the cruise
officers
are invited, and you can meet them at that reception. There's a lot of good things that happen when you connect ahead of time and you have friends before you even get to the ship. Another thing that is starting to take off are people are creating Facebook groups. It's pretty new. I don't think we've used one yet.
Not yet.
But we've heard people are starting Facebook groups for specific cruises so they can chat with people before they get on the ship.
So now that you've decided to take a repositioning cruise, the next thing you're going to want to do is be prepared to enjoy it, because they can be a lot of fun. So one thing to consider is, are you prepared to deal with sea days? So every repositioning cruise is going to have multiple sea days. Sometimes you're going to have 4 or 5 in a row. We once had a port get canceled because of weather. And so we had like 7 sea days in a row. It was a long time. So you want to be prepared that you have some things to do. Now just know the cruise itself is going to have lots of activities, and if any of them interest you, you're going to have stuff to do. They do things like trivia. They'll have interviews with the officers or different departments of the ship. There's going to be games, and they have little nightclubs. You can go dancing, and they do the newlywed game and stuff like that, just to kind of meet people and have fun. The trivia is always very, very popular. And so you're just going to make sure you have stuff like that. There's a library, but are you going to want to maybe bring with you, some cards or some books that you're going to want to read? Just think, what am I going to want to do on those sea days? If you're content to go sit by the pool and just bake in the sun, that's awesome. That works too. But be prepared with some activities in case you need them.
Another thing you might want to bring with you is a rubber ducky. And I'm not kidding. This is a thing. We discovered a few years ago while we were taking a cruise in the Caribbean. People bring rubber duckies on board, and they are elaborately decorated rubber duckies, not just your regular run-of-the-mill rubber ducky. And they hide them on the ship for other people to find. Mm-hmm. Generally, they put a little tag or a note on it so that you can register your rubber ducky, and
sometimes it's fun. You can post it on Facebook, so that they see that you found it.
Yeah, there are actual Facebook groups devoted to bringing duckies on board, mm-hmm. and trading and hiding and finding. Just a strange little activity that you might find enjoyable. So keep your eye out next time you're on a ship.
The next thing you're going to want to prepare for are your port days. So for a lot of people, this means taking excursions. Whether you book them through the ship, or whether you find a private tour, or whether you meet someone in those Facebook groups or on the roll call and you get together with other people and go in on a tour. It's just having a tour ahead of time that you know that you're going to do. In some ports, you can just walk off the ship, and there's going to be tour guides standing out there selling different tours. Often those are going to be less expensive, if you just do them on the day. But sometimes they'll say, we're going to go if we can get 8 people. And so if you're a party of 2, then you have to kind of sit there and wait for them to find 6 other people to go on it. Some ports don't have that at all. And so it just depends on how dangerously you want to live and hoping you're going to find something. Some ports you might just be content walking around. Maybe there's a castle in town or a beautiful central square, and you just want to get off the ship and go walking around and explore the city, find a place to have lunch. It's totally up to you, but it's just, being prepared for those situations of what's going to make you happy. Another thing you might want to consider is the Wi-Fi. Often when you get off in a port, there's usually Wi-Fi available in the port itself. Not always, but usually. Sometimes though, it can get very overwhelmed with, 1,000 or 2,000 people getting off a cruise ship and all trying to log on it at the same time. So sometimes we've gotten off at ports and had great Wi-Fi and sometimes not. So it just depends. Another way to find free Wi-Fi is find a McDonald's. McDonald's is everywhere in the world and they almost always offer free Wi-Fi. And so, there have been times where we went in and just bought a soda or an ice cream and sat in the corner and got on the Wi-Fi so that you could do your texting. It just depends. But that's another thing to think about.
Speaking of Wi-Fi, they do sell it on the ship. There's different packages for, I don't even know,
we've never
different
done it.
Amounts of
minutes or...
If you are a casual user and hopefully want to send some emails, I bet it works perfectly fine. I would be a little leery of using it if you had to do business Zoom calls or something. You can get Wi-Fi, but I wouldn't trust it as being the most reliable Wi-Fi when you're out at sea.
Yeah, it's Wi-Fi from the satellite, so they're really spotty, and we've never bought it, but we hear people complain about it all the time. Yeah. Another thing you want to think about is food, and I really, really suggest having a plan. Because, a lot of people go on cruises because it's their vacation. And so they get on that ship and they are there to indulge and they are eating every meal and they are getting 4 appetizers and 2 entrees and they're going to the midnight buffet and the chocolate buffet and getting ice cream by the pool. And it's just about indulging. But if you are a long-term traveler, if this is just part of your travels, I really suggest just having a plan so that you know that yes, you want to go and you want to enjoy the food, but you don't necessarily have to indulge in everything that is available to you. Because there's going to be a lot, and if you're not careful, you're going to gain a pound every single day of that cruise. And that can be a little overwhelming by the end. So just have a plan and you're going to be fine.
Another thing to pay attention to are what the ports are actually like. Not every port is walking through Venice. Some ports are a private island, and a lot of the ships have private islands in the Caribbean, and some of you may be familiar with those. And they do have activities there, but mostly it's like another day on the ship. You just get your toes in the sand.
An important thing to consider is going to be your cabin. Like I've said before, we really like the inside cabins because I sleep really well in them. However, you're also going to want to consider where on the ship you want to be. So traditionally speaking, like if you want to be conservative, if you're concerned about the waves or about getting seasick, usually you want to be closer to the center of the ship and potentially lower in the ship. You're going to feel the waves less there, and you might have less of a problem. For me, I really like the rocking of the ship. It puts me to sleep. So I like going front and high. And that's where I can feel it a little bit better and it rocks me right to sleep and I love it, but I'm not someone who gets seasick. So it just depends on you and what you're gonna appreciate more. Another thing to consider when you are choosing a cabin is you wanna look at the floor plan and you wanna think, is there a dining room right above me? Is there a swimming pool right above me?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we've never had a problem. We've always gotten really good rooms, but you hear people complain about hearing, chairs scrape across.
Or you're next to a service elevator.
That's just noisy. And so we always look for those rooms that are in between other rooms, both above and below and on the sides. And then we've never had a problem with noise.
Now let's talk about things you might want to bring with you to make your trip a little easier. We just have a few we want to share. One is a hanging shoe rack.
No, this is such a weird one.
It's a weird one, but it is so, there's limited space in a cruise ship cabin. Mm-hmm. So we like to hang a shoe rack over a closet door, and it has all these compartments in it. And we can put all kinds of stuff in those.
Yeah.
And things are easy to put in and take out, and it gives us more space.
And then you don't have to worry, you're outside of the cabin and the ship goes through some waves. You don't have to worry about stuff falling off of closets or whatever, because it's just there in its little pocket.
Yeah. You also might want to bring some magnets, some strong magnets, because the walls are magnetic and it's another place to store things, or put papers on the wall or on your front door if you have a note to share with someone who's looking for you or your cabin mates. Magnets, we found, are also helpful. Another thing, an extension cord. Now, you cannot bring an extension cord with a surge protector, but you can bring an extension cord that can help with your electronics around the room. Make sure you always unplug it when you leave the room, but you can use one. And the last thing we're going to talk about is wine. I don't know if any cruise lines let you just bring free wine anymore. They used to.
Yeah.
But you can often check with your cruise line, you can bring on up to 2 bottles, and then you have to pay a corkage fee. But it might be worth it to you because the corkage fee is less than any bottle of wine on the ship. So if you want to drink wine on the ship, look into what the cruise line's policy is for wine.
The last thing we want to suggest, and we've kind of mentioned this before, but just go into it thinking about making some friends while you're there. We tend to be introverts, and even we have really made some wonderful friends on ships. Whether you're, meeting them for dinner or you're meeting them at bingo, whatever it is, it's just really fun just to meet new people and hear about different experiences and hear where they've been and where they're going. And it makes the whole experience of being on the cruise that much more fun.
Years after cruise, we don't really remember the food. We don't remember the activities. We remember the ports and we remember the people.
Yeah, for sure. We hope you found this video useful. If you think we have missed anything, any tips or tricks that you are aware of, please leave those in the comments below. We would love to see them and upgrade our own game. We release a new video every Sunday, so if you enjoyed this, we will see you back next week. Today, we want to show you one of our
trademark moves.
It's better.
Have you heard the one about the traveling salesman?
No, I haven't. Would you tell me?
He walks into a bar with a nun and a rubber ducky. I remembered something. I remembered something. Oh, I forgot that.
Today and not tomorrow.